And what if the president wakes up tomorrow and says, I don't want any black people in the military?
Are you really going to go down this ridiculous
I'm sorry.
It's bathrooms today. It's sports today. It's sports tomorrow. It's the military today.
No, it's also sports today, by the way.
Yeah, it is sports today. And
80% of Americans agree about it.
You don't think trans people are vulnerable in this country?
So is it your position that the commander-in-chief should recruit people who you're describing as vulnerable?
Welcome back to Rattlesnake TV, guys. In this video, we're going to be covering a debate from CNN where they are talking about transgender individuals being banned from military service. This is at times an awkward back and forth because you've got the CNN people going really hard on the pro-trans argument, and then you've got the conservatives who are kind of just dancing around the truth and don't really want to say it. So we're going to go through that, and we're going to give the actual arguments as to why what the CNN talking heads are saying is just utter nonsense. So with that, let's get into it.
The main argument, Elena, that the Trump administration is making here is that that allowing transgender troops to serve hurts lethality and it hurts readiness. What do you say to that?
Well, there's no evidence of that. I think that, if that was the case, we've seen transgender people serving honorably for the last several years. And what has changed between now and then? They've just woken up to a new administration who has a different outlook on their ability to serve. So I think that, if you talk to people who are serving on active duty alongside transgender troops, they're not making these complaints. The leaders in the military are not making these complaints. These are political complaints about military service. So I think that all of the courts that have looked at this issue and looked at it, have said there's nothing in fact to back up what the government is claiming here. In fact, the judges challenged them to produce evidence, and they couldn't produce any evidence. So I think it's a really dark day for our country where basically we're allowed to discriminate against a class of people.
Scott, if they can't produce evidence that this actually does, in fact, have an impact on readiness, how is this not then just discrimination?
Well, it's the opinion of the commander-in-chief, who, according to our Constitution, is the head of the military. Regardless of anyone's opinion or anybody's, whatever side you're on, whether you're for it or against it, at some juncture, the president is the commander-in-chief of the military, and he has and should have broad latitude to determine how the armed forces should be operated. And so I think that's what he's doing here. I think that's ultimately what the court said today, was that the president is the commander-in-chief, and we gotta respect that under our Constitution.
But to her point, if there's not a downside, and it's been going on for years now, and I'm just presenting your argument to them.
Yeah.
What is the argument other than Trump, Hegseth, just doesn't want trans people in the military?
Well, I think that the president, we'll ultimately see. I think that's why the court is allowing the president to move forward with this until it works itself through the court system. Maybe the Supreme Court will be the final arbiter here to say, yeah or nay, you can do this. But ultimately, I think the court is showcasing deference to the executive, saying that, look, you're the president, you're over the military. You do, for the most part, get to sort of dictate the standards of our military. And I don't really see how you can push back against that. Again, we'll see what happens in the court.
I can.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I can. What if the president wakes up tomorrow and says, I don't want any black people in the military? Do we give deference to him on that? Well, no, wait a second. It's not ridiculous. It's not ridiculous because you're discriminating against a group of people in a very similar way. No,
I knew you were going to say that, but it's still
excuse me. Well, I'm glad you.
I'll leave this one alone today.
I'm curious. Why is it ridiculous? You just said the president should be the one who just decides.
Right.
So if he decides, wakes up tomorrow and says, I think it's bad for morale, it's bad for cohesiveness, for there to be black people in the military, Latino people in the military, just in her hypothetical scenario, what's the difference between that and what we're seeing here?
Are you really going to go down this ridiculous road?
I'm sorry.
This is ridiculous.
So the old race question. The answer to this is actually just very simple. But obviously, when you're on CNN, when you're on cable news, you can't just come out and say the truth. And they're dancing around it and worried about just telling it how it is. But what an insulting thing to do, by the way, to compare black people to transgender people. No, they were born black, and transgender people have a mental illness called gender dysphoria. If the president came out tomorrow and said that they didn't want black people serving in the military, then it would get struck down by the Supreme Court straight away, and there's no way that he could enact that. But in this case, these people have gender dysphoria. That's a mental illness, and you don't want to be arming people with mental illnesses, and you especially don't want to be sending these people into combat zones where they are responsible for the lives of fellow soldiers. And this is not a new thing. Other mental illnesses that preclude people from joining the military include schizophrenia, bipolar, severe depression and anxiety, OCD, various different personality disorders, autism, depending on the function. If they've got severe PTSD, they can't join the military. Even history of suicidal ideation and self-harm and ADHD can rule them out. None of the conditions there include being black either. So it's a false equivalence, a very basic logical fallacy. But if you listen to CNN, then they're just going to cover up these facts.
And what if the president wakes up tomorrow and says, I don't want any black people in the military?
And you know what else gets covered up? The insane health benefits of cocoa flavonols. Studies have been done to show that the flavonols in cocoa stimulate stem cells to come out of your bone marrow. But don't take it from me. Listen to Harvard scientist Dr. William Lee, who actually backs this up.
So studies have been done to show that the flavonols in cocoa stimulate stem cells to come out of your bone marrow like bees in a beehive in your bloodstream, and they go out and they find wherever needs to be repaired. If it's your heart, they'll fix it. If it's in your liver, they'll fix it. If it's your skin, they'll fix it. And so we can eat foods like high flavanol cocoa in order to be able to actually get the stem cells to work a little bit better. Now, how do we know this actually functions and works in people? Well, clinical studies have been done with high flavanol cocoa to show that in like men who are in their 60s with heart disease, they could actually just have 2 cups of dark chocolate hot cocoa a day for a month. Yeah. And they doubled the amount of stem cells in their bloodstream, and their circulation improved measurably. And then what's even more important and impressive is that there was a study called the Cosmos study that was completed recently that showed that eating high flavanol cocoa decreases the risk of cardiovascular death.
So it's dark chocolate. And there are some really beneficial properties in cocoa that get ruined in the chocolate making process, which is why Black Forest created the first ever high flavanol cocoa powder packed with all the good stuff. And it's only 20 calories, so I can have it with my coffee, my protein shake, and it tastes amazing. And it boosts your body's natural stem cell production so that you don't have to go and get $50,000 injections like the Holly weirdos. Plus, despite all of these health benefits, I have also worked out a great deal with Black Forest where you can get 40% off for the next 48 hours. So do yourselves a favor, guys. Hit those links below, pinned in the comments and the top of the bio, and stock up before it's all gone. Back to the video.
This is a ridiculous argument.
Well,
the president and the Secretary of Defense, the President and Secretary of Defense have an argument here. They believe that readiness and unit cohesion and overall operations of the military are impacted by this. That is their opinion. And that is the opinion of the Commander-in-Chief, who the Constitution gives broad latitude to run the armed forces. So that's their opinion. You're allowed to have one. You're allowed to have one. You're also allowed to run for president and become Commander-in-Chief yourself. But until you do, he's the Commander-in-Chief.
I have to just say, I didn't hear an answer to the hypothetical, right? I just didn't hear it. I didn't. I mean, okay, the definition of discrimination, according to the American Psychological Association, discrimination is the unfair or prejudicial treatment of people or groups based on characteristics such as race, gender, age, or sexual orientation. What is the difference between, prohibiting certain groups like transgender people from serving versus, people based on their race or even their gender, frankly?
I personally think there's a difference, and I'm just going to leave it at that.
Well, I will say...
Do you believe that race and... Are you saying that the quality of race and the quality of transgender are the same?
I'm just asking the question because I think you're making there's a distinction, but you're not explaining why.
No, I'm asking, you guys brought up the hypothetical. Are you arguing that someone's race is the same as someone choosing to become transgender?
But your argument, you've made the argument twice that the Commander-in-Chief's opinion is all that matters. You've said that twice now.
Well, under the Constitution, yes.
So if he wakes up tomorrow and says it's not okay to be gay or lesbian and serve, because that's his opinion, there's nothing to back that up. They meet the physical standards, they meet the intellectual standards, they have voluntarily decided to serve their country, to give their life for this country. So many of us don't have to. That it's the opinion without any basis in fact that's what matters more than the Constitution of equal rights and equal protection.
Go ahead. No,
I was going to say the other thing, or there's a few things that bother me about this, and mostly it was the language of the policy, right? When you're reading at some of these words, transgender people as inherently untruthful, undisciplined, dishonorable. That's like a very weighty thing to say about people who are courageously deciding to protect this country. The other problem, Scott, is that it's never enough. It's bathrooms today. It's sports today. It's sports tomorrow. It's the military today.
No, it's also sports today, by the way.
Yeah, it is sports today.
And 80% of Americans agree, by the way.
Oh, that's fine. And 80%, guess what? The majority sometimes is wrong. That also happens, right? Because the majority used to believe that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was somebody who was a threat, that somebody who was not a good American. The majority of people used to be against civil rights. Were they right? No, they weren't. And so the whole point is when you target one group, and inevitably that line moves to everybody else. And I'm not saying he's coming for black people tomorrow, but considering that this is a military or this is a leadership that is already using DEI as code word for black people already when it comes to the military, suddenly when you don't protect the most vulnerable, you wind up making it worse for everybody else that's in the marginalized community. You don't think trans people are vulnerable in this country?
So is it your position that the commander-in-chief should recruit people who you're describing as vulnerable into the lethal fighting force?
He should recruit people who want to serve and protect this country. And it's really kind of ironic considering he dodged the draft that he suddenly has an opinion about who to serve.
So guys, even when we are in this modern woke age where all this woke ideology has infected the education system and it has infected the corporate world, when it comes to the military, it's a completely different story. This is a matter of national security and it's a matter of your nation's sovereignty. So you need to be very rigorous when it comes to who is defending and representing you, but also how you are perceived on the world stage, as well as how confident people are domestically, which was a big problem under the Biden administration. How much confidence does it fill Americans with, and how do you think the Russians and the Chinese feel when they see this? Or how about this? Or this? Or this person in US military gear pronouncing their pronouns on their desk? Or how do you think the adversaries will feel when they see that the US is actually providing transgender surgeries to military personnel?
Not a day goes by that I'm not grateful to be serving at this period of time. Being able to undergo a full gender transition beyond hormones, laser hair removal, Botox, lip injections, hair lowering, like literally cannot be more thankful to be alive now.
Here's the Russian military propaganda that they put out. And here's the US military propaganda.
It begins in California with a little girl raised by two moms. I also marched for equality. I like to think I've been defending freedom from an early age. After meeting with an Army recruiter, I found it. A way to prove my inner strength.
I'm U.S. Army Corporal Emma Malone Lord, and I answered my calling.
Doesn't exactly fill you with confidence, but let's continue with this.
We have an opinion because you won the election.
The good news is, and Elena, you pointed this out, this is going through the court system. The other side has the opportunity to present evidence.
Except for tomorrow, there's going to be thousands of people who wake up and get processed out. The harm will be done.
And I certainly understand that. But again, there's still an opportunity for it to continue through the proper process.
Right, but they wake up tomorrow without a job, being removed from their commands. Operational readiness will be impacted. And so there's commands that are going to be left without leaders. There's going to be real-life implications for theaters around the world where our military is protecting this country. And for what end?
Elena, I guess my point is, if a strong enough evidence is presented throughout the court process, all the way up to SCOTUS, and it's ultimately believed, okay, hey, the other side has enough evidence where we can't rule in favor of the executive, then the executive, I believe, would respect that decision. But we have to allow this thing to move forward and see what was
your experience in the military like? Did you serve after you had transitioned, or?
No, I served before my transition.
So you weren't in during your at all?
No.
Okay.
I came to know that I was transgender while I was serving with a top secret and above clearance. And I knew that I couldn't pass my polygraph test. And so I had to make a tough decision. Do I stay true to my character, my values, my integrity, or do I choose to leave this role and live a private life? And so I think that the challenge is that the injunction was to allow people to continue to serve while the courts played out. Right? So there would be no harm done to these folks, giving the courts an opportunity to work through these issues so people wouldn't lose their jobs. Now they're going to wake up tomorrow without jobs they can't just come back in for serving 22 years, waiting for this court case to work its way through for 6, 9 months, 2 years.
So you hadn't, so was there a prohibition on you transitioning while you were in the military?
Back in that time, there was a ban against serving if you were, the don't ask, don't tell policy.
This was in the mid-90s.
This was in the mid-90s. Yeah.
So, but can I ask you a question? Because I think this is relevant. You know, Elena was serving, left because of this policy. How many people is it okay to lose who are competent, who are doing their jobs because for reasons like that? I mean, at the time, she could have been a gay or lesbian, and it probably would have been the same result as well. I mean, I think that's why ultimately they ended Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
I mean, I think
discrimination.
I think ultimately the Commander-in-Chief and the Secretary of Defense have to decide comprehensively about troop levels, troop readiness, and unit cohesion, and overall recruitment. They're actually quite happy with recruitment right now.
But that has there's never been a military standard that transgender people have not met. So the military standards have not been lowered for people who are transgender. And I think that's the issue here. And the courts that have looked at this issue in depth have said this is pure animus, that there is no evidence of this. So if you actually take the rhetoric out of it and look at the issue at its heart, all the courts say the same thing. So I think that's the travesty here.
So there's a bunch of reasons why this is just not true, that transgender people pass every single examination. We mentioned before the mental illness part of things. These people are much more likely to self-harm, and it can be a danger to others. And if they don't let people in with all of these other different mental illnesses, then there shouldn't be a special exemption for this one. Furthermore, these people require constant medical treatments, such as hormone therapies and other things. And this isn't something that's always readily available in combat areas. So this could be a massive distraction for a platoon. And these transition surgeries have a lot of different health implications that come down the line. When you look into it, surprise, surprise, guys, it's not a very healthy thing to do to your body and can have serious long-term ramifications. And the military has to cover these medical expenses, which also puts a financial burden on them. So yes, there are many reasons why these people are not suited to military roles. Sorry.
I believe the president has the constitutional right to do this, and I also think you have the constitutional right to make your case on it, and everybody's going to be in court about it, and I think you should continue to make your case.
But you also talked about unit cohesion, and that's exactly the same kind of argument that they made against integrating the military when Harry Truman did it. I'm sorry, it's the same argument. It's the same.
I mean, is she wrong about that, though? I mean, she is right about that.
Who did not want to serve
I'm aware.
White people didn't want to serve black people because of unit cohesion. So now you're saying gay people shouldn't serve with straight people.
We only have a couple seconds. Chair Michael, I see that you're frustrated that she made that argument, but is she wrong that unit cohesion was used as an excuse to keep the military segregated for a long time?
I think we should
and also don't ask, don't tell when it comes to discriminating against gay and lesbian people.
We should focus on the issue at hand. That's what I think.
Same argument.
But no, we should focus on the issue at hand. I don't know why we keep going to bringing up race. Let's just focus on the issue at hand.
Look, it's race, sexual orientation. We've seen this twice, right? In two major junctures for the military. I'm just wondering if she is drawing parallels here between the arguments that are being made to maintain this policy.
I reject those parallels. That's my answer. I reject the parallels. I think they're ludicrous parallels.
Do you feel like you had a choice in your life as to what you were going to do? Or no, of course not.
No.
The same way that I didn't have a choice to be born who I was, the same way you didn't have a choice to be born who you were. So why do we get exclusions and she doesn't?
I didn't say that Elena should be excluded.
Okay, why, under this president's policy,
my opinion here is let it work itself through the court system.
And I have no problem with that, but just don't fire people while it's working through the courts. That's what these injunctions were doing, was letting it work through the courts. And the Supreme Court, I think, really just delegitimized itself even further today. And I think that's a challenge for all of this country when we don't have the checks and balances of the courts, checking the executive power, and Congress checking the executive power, and all of those things. Because at the end of the day, right now in the military, you can be a white supremacist, a known white supremacist, and serve in this military, but you cannot be transgender and serve in this military. That's a fact.
So once again, you can see that these people just have to bite their tongues, and they're not able to just say what it really is. And then she's able to go on this rant of, how did you feel? Did you feel like you were born this way? Okay, lady, prove that that dude was born a woman. Prove that he was born a woman. I really can't wait to hear how you prove that. Anyways, I really do wish that I was on a panel like that, but I think that I've got more chance of probably getting kicked by a snake. So anyways, guys, don't forget to smash that like button on the way out. Hit that subscribe. Check out Black Forest supplements. They will all be linked right below for your perusal. And if you'd like to watch another video, right here. Till next time, I'm Jake. This is RattlesnakeTV, keeping you armed and dangerous.